Good morning. I'm Jake Tibbitts, and I'm the Natural Resources Manager for Eureka County. And I'm also a supervisor on the Eureka Conservation District. And I took a role in the Diamond Valley Groundwater Management Plan as facilitating the process and helping get the plan drafted and submitted to the state engineer in 2015. Before I get into more specifics about the Diamond Valley Groundwater Management Plan, I'd just like to generally discuss the concept of place-based planning first. Place-based planning is not just simply a plan that's covering a specific geographic area. If this were the case, all land and resource planning would actually be place-based planning. But place-based planning is instead a concept, and it's a concept based on both tangible and intangible things. So it puts a large focus on what's seen here on this slide as place meanings and place values to help guide this process. Another important thing to understand is that places typically, they don't have a single set of meanings held by everyone. So understanding that there's contested meanings of place even within people of a similar mindset, and there's this concept of existence attachment that also needs to be understood. So in my example, or our example in the Diamond Valley Groundwater Management Plan, at the beginning of this process, there were various folks that had different visions of what they thought was important about Diamond Valley and what they wanted Diamond Valley to be. So existence attachment, one of the definitions that you'll find in the literature about place-based planning, is that it's an appreciation of and an attachment to a place that one has not experienced firsthand. But that can also be a future desired or a future expected condition, or the vision somebody has of a currently known place. So in our circumstance, again, it was taking what we have as Diamond Valley now and what is the desired or expected condition moving forward. So this is Diamond Valley, a little background on it, just to give you some familiarity with it before I move on, is this is looking from south to north. It's a terminal basin, so it's the terminal basin in the Diamond Valley flow system. There's a large groundwater discharge area at the north end, as you can see down there with a playa. There's about 26,000 irrigated acres. The perennial yield in Diamond Valley is recognized by the state engineer as 30,000 acre feet annually. And there's about 133,000 acre feet of groundwater appropriated in Diamond Valley. You can see the town of Eureka down at the lower right, the Ruby Hill mine near the town of Eureka. There's also the Mount Hope mine, which falls partially in Diamond Valley. It's important too to note that 2/3 of the population of all of Eureka County gets their water needs from Diamond Valley. So that includes the town of Eureka, a couple general improvement districts in Diamond Valley, and dozens of domestic wells. In 2011, the Nevada State Legislature passed Assembly Bill 419 that ended up being in NRS 534-110. And this allows the state engineer to designate a basin as a critical management area if it's consistently pumped or above the perennial yield. And there's two ways a state engineer can designate it. One is he has the discretion to do it on his own. And the second is he can designate it or he shall designate it upon a petition by groundwater rights holders asking for that designation. An important thing to understand is once a basin is designated as a critical management area, that it starts a 10-year stopwatch, I often say, and that it creates this time frame for folks to come together and develop a groundwater management plan and to get that plan approved by the state engineer and in effect. And if that does not occur within this 10-year time frame, the state engineer is then mandated to regulate by strict priority, meaning drawing the line and determining who's junior and who's senior and cutting off all the junior water rights, including withdrawals from domestic wells. But well before Diamond Valley became a critical management area, there's been a lot of efforts by the farmers in Diamond Valley to find ways to reduce pumping. So as I mentioned, there's 133,000 acre-feet of water appropriated in Diamond Valley, and 95% of that is irrigation water. And there's only, in recent years, there's been 55 to 65,000 acre-feet of water pumped. So that shows right there that many farmers are really pushing the limits of conservation and doing all they can. There were also a couple feasibility studies that were funded by Eureka County, where we hired Hansford Economic Consulting. So many of you know Catherine Hansford, and she did a great job in doing two different studies that looked at the feasibility of standing up a taxing district, like a general improvement district, for the sole purpose of raising funding to then purchase and retire water rights, or to actually do a set-aside program where folks would be paid to not farm and to not pump their water. In March of 2014, a group of irrigators approached the Eureka Conservation District and wanted to know if the Eureka Conservation District could take a more active role and a more formalized role in actually creating a formal process to get people together and to talk about solutions. So many of the things over the previous years had been these random acts and small groups of farmers, and there wasn't really a congealed effort to get everybody to the table to talk about, as a community and as Diamond Valley water rights holders as a whole, what could be done. So in 2014, the Conservation District did agree to that and started holding public meetings under Nevada open meeting law. There was the hiring of Steve Walker. Again, many of you know Steve Walker was hired by the Conservation District to come in and to lead a scoping process. So he essentially had various workshops. Steve even went to the kitchen tables of folks and talked about it. And there was a lot of ideas and hurdles and different things identified in that scoping process that we were looking to address. After Mr. Walker completed his scoping process, the Conservation District retained Dr. Steve Lewis, who's now retired from the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension. And Dr. Lewis came in. He's a recognized professional facilitator. He's done a great job in facilitating many resource-based plans throughout Nevada. And he came in and helped kind of get this stage set for moving forward on a groundwater management plan. And again, this was all before Diamond Valley was designated as a critical management area. During that facilitated process by Dr. Lewis, the group of attendees developed this vision statement. And I'll go again back to that existence attachment concept that I talked about before. And essentially that's what this vision statement is. It's looking at what people want Diamond Valley to be if there were a successful groundwater management plan. And you'll see many of the terms in here, they're intangible, they're kind of hard to quantify, but I'd like to note that the folks did focus on stability of the community and the economy, and diversification, and being united, fair, and forward thinking, and thinking about the future generation, making sure that there was water available for the future generation. So I think this was a big step getting folks together on this. Shortly after this vision statement was developed, the state engineer finally did designate Diamond Valley a critical management area in August of 2015. So that started again that 10-year stopwatch. And the state engineer did that on his own without a petition from folks in Diamond Valley. Many folks in Diamond Valley, including the state engineer, felt that there needed to be a more formalized process, and there needed to be an incentive to get people to the table to start talking about solutions. And this critical management area designation finally did kind of kick off that more formal process in getting people to the table. So during the development of the groundwater management plan, these are the stated goals that are actually in the final groundwater management plan that were what folks wanted to meet these goals in order to eventually achieve that vision in Diamond Valley. And you can read that on your own. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the plan itself. One thing to understand, though, is you have to understand the specific outlay of groundwater rights in Diamond Valley and why that works towards this specific groundwater management plan. This GMP in Diamond Valley was not intended to be something that could work anywhere else. It was specific to the circumstances in Diamond Valley. So you have to look at these water right dynamics. So on this chart, you can see that on the horizontal x-axis is the dates of priority of the water rights, and on the vertical y-axis is the cumulative duty. That red line running across the chart is the 30,000 acre-foot perennial yield line. So under a strict curtailment by priority, every one of those triangles or diamonds above that red line would go away. But what's really important to note, I think, is this separation of junior water rights versus senior water rights. And you can see that there's a vertical line right around 1960. And that around January 1960 to for that year, from January to December, there's that straight line right there. And many of these water rights are separated literally by days and by months. So some of the very most senior water rights, right around 9,000 acre feet of water, or even more 4,000 or 5,000 acre feet of water, are literally just 2 to 3 to 5 months from those that are very junior, right up there around 60 to 80,000 acre feet. You'll also note that there's another line that looks like there was another slug of appropriations in the mid-1970s. And it's also important to understand that many of those water rights were actually senior in Diamond Valley at one time. So the state engineer did a forfeiture process in Diamond Valley for various non-use and offered farmers the opportunity to reapply for that water, the same water, with the junior priority. So some of those were shifted because of non-use and forfeiture proceedings from senior water rights to junior water rights. So they were actually water already appropriated that were kind of reshuffled to be junior. The tail ends of this, the dots you see on both tail ends, most of those are groundwater stock water rights. The Diamond Valley Groundwater Management Plan itself, it is a market-based approach. It takes any groundwater right in good standing. It issues shares according to that water right based on its priority. So the more senior water rights do receive more shares than the junior water rights. And then in any given year, there's an amount of water that is then divided amongst the shares in Diamond Valley. And that water can be freely traded or bartered or sold or whatever for people to make up their water needs. But what I wanted to focus on here is that the plan has what's called the benchmark pumping reductions as well as the most aggressive reductions. And it gives the flexibility for the state engineer to find the pumping reductions that would best match Diamond Valley based on groundwater monitoring and seeing how the groundwater is stabilizing according to pumping reductions. So you'll see that it is expected to reach a net pumping below the perennial yield as early as year 22 and as late as year 35 under the benchmark reductions. But you'll see that most of the reductions are actually within the first 10 years of pumping. Actually, there's a 30% pumping reduction required in the first 10 years, and then those two lines diverge at that point with some flexibility. So if you want a little more information on the Diamond Valley Groundwater Management Plan plight, I'd point you to a great article by Daniel Rothberg in the Nevada Independent. There's a link to it here. And Marty Plaskett, who's actually on the panel today, is interviewed in that. And it kind of tells the whole story from a diverse perspective and from people that are against the plan and appealing the plan and some of those that are in support. So I think you can get a broad view. And then you can actually go to the state engineer's website and there's a tab for the Diamond Valley GMP and you can actually read the plan and look at the various materials there. So I want to focus on some of the things that I learned in this process that I think are very important for folks if you're going to do some kind of similar local or place-based planning. It's hard for people to leave their baggage at the door. It's just a hard thing for people to do. And we found ourselves really spinning our wheels in this process where folks would want to relive the inequities of the past. Some decision the state engineer had made in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s that they were still unhappy with. Or one of their neighbors had done something that they didn't like 20 years ago, or they themselves had made a decision that ended up putting them in a position today that they just really didn't like. And it was really hard for us to move on past that. But we ended up coming up with again, through a facilitated process, we came up with a list of assumptions that we were going to all operate under, that we could say, okay, we can move forward now under this list of assumptions. And one of them was this, that the groundwater management plan, it doesn't address inequities of the past. It starts from where we're at current pumping levels and current water rights in good standing, and it works forward to reduce pumping. We just can't use this GMP to fix the issues of the past, and it was just something that we weren't able and wouldn't be able to do. We couldn't make any progress if we were going to focus on the past. The second thing is that changing minds is part of the process. And I'll say that I really like this quote from Shaw where he says, progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So folks did change their mind, and that's important. There tended to be intractable positions at certain times, but in the end, the plan came up with something the majority of people could sign on to, or that they could actually live with. But I will also say that there were folks that in the end appealed the plan. There was a one individual who appealed the plan, and some of the things being put in that appeal on the groundwater management plan were things we had no idea this person had concerns about. So again, none of us should be surprised in these processes if some people change their minds or some people don't even really come forward during the process of what their concerns are. In the end, legal matters will matter, and I have this shot up sign of a blind curve. Folks working on these place-based plans are they're the folks making a living and using the water. We didn't have attorneys in the room working on this. We didn't have professional water managers in the room in the most part working on this. And in the end, the plan has to stand, any plan that you develop has to stand up to legal muster. And that's where we find ourselves now, is that the groundwater management plan here has been challenged in court. And it's being asserted that it is not legal and doesn't fall within Nevada water law. And so again, those are things that folks need to have a firm understanding of, is that it's going to be very hard to insulate any plan from legal challenges. And in the end, the attorneys will have their say and will become involved, even though they may not have participated in the process. So what's next for us and what's needed? So we have now less than 5 years of the 10-year time frame to get this plan, or get a plan approved and adopted and stood up in Diamond Valley. So our plan has been overturned by the courts. It's in front of the Supreme Court right now. We need clarity on what can and what can't be in the groundwater management plan. And so the main question for us is there anything other than strict application of prior appropriation possible in an overdrafted basin? I think in some of these basins that are just barely over allocated or overdrafted, there probably is. But in a basin like Diamond Valley, is there a way to reach a sustainable pumping levels outside of prior appropriation? And that's one of the questions we have moving forward. And that question is the main question in front of the Supreme Court right now. So hopefully that will provide some clarity to everybody in Nevada that may have interest in moving forward with the groundwater management plan at some point. So another thing, I want to close with this, is consensus is possible, but I don't think unanimity is. And I use the definition of consensus is not necessarily people standing up and either signing their name on a petition to approve a plan or actively defending it, but consensus being that it's something that people can live with. And we know that we were not able to reach unanimity in Diamond Valley, and we weren't able to reach a place where everybody could live with it. And emphasized with the folks that have appealed our plan. And I really like this comic, again, just to close. This came from the Salt Lake Tribune, Bagley, some of his great political cartoons. And I struck out Utah there. And it's, again, we have diverse interests in this. Even in Diamond Valley, all these interests exist and have been participating in this process. And we have a limited amount of water, and finding these place-based solutions and understanding the flexibilities we really have is going to be very important for all of us moving forward. And I know I've run a little bit over time, but again, I'm going to be available after these presentations on the live question and answer, and I'm happy to get more details or answer any questions, or try to answer any questions you may have at that time. So thanks very much, and we look forward to the Q&A.